And that is pure anthropology, and this is what the podcast is all about, the nuance, right? Demystifying a trend that we're seeing everywhere. And one of the trends that I want to speak to you about is senior leaders sort of uh, leaving their big roles to
Mhm.
build work with more meaning.
Mm.
So today I want to introduce Merve Hokamp, ex-Google leader, in-seed MBA, and executive coach. And it just sits right in the signal of that shift. So Merve pairs AI-driven data-backed leadership tools with something very wonderfully analog, the Lego serious play, in order to help executives to get past dashboards and back to decisions that matter. This conversation is not going to be about tech versus touchy-feely. It's a field study as AI sort of eats routine management. What distinctly human capabilities become non-negotiable? Attention, listening, cultural intelligence. We talked a little bit about that. And then how can leaders scale that? So we'll talk about the level 3 global listening, the cross-cultural teams in a machine translated world, and how to onboard AI as a new kind of teammate without it losing psychological safety. So if you're rethinking your path or if you're rewriting your org, this episode is your compass. So Merve, thank you so much for joining and welcome.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Amazing. So, as I mentioned, so today we're going to talk about this cultural shift. And Mary, you've written about something that you call the Great Corporate Exodus. It's the way of high performing leaders leaving big companies to build something with meaning. And from your lens, as both strategist and coach and a leader, how much of that shift is driven by culture and how much
Mm.
by technology?
That's such a good question. I think of AI sometimes as both the mirror, if you will, and the magnifier or the magnifying glass of leadership and corporate careers in general as well. It shows people what part of their job is truly valuable or value add and what parts are just maybe in the case of leaders managerial busy work, right? So I work with a lot of leaders, as you know, in managerial positions, and they come to me saying, I have all these brilliant ideas, I want to innovate, I want to create, but I wish that I had this chunk of time where I could block 4 hours to work on this great idea, to strategize, to create, to come up with a roadmap or road plan to execute it. But I don't have that time. I'm pulled in all sorts of different directions. I'm too busy with my admin, with reporting, with politics, with just managerial busy work, really. Well, now all of a sudden, AI can do a big chunk of that work. And I think that in general is very positive, but it also is a bit of a shift, as you have put it really well. It's, let's say, both liberating, but can also be terrifying because it gets you to ask yourself, if you're a leader, well, if the machine can do the repetitive part of my job, what's left for me to do? So maybe all the strategic work, maybe all the creative work, maybe all the innovative work. As we've said, that's something that they've been wanting to do. But then they're also programmed to do all of these busy work or reporting or strategy decks, for example, business reviews, for example. Well, guess what? Now ChatGPT or Gemini, Claude, they can do the strategy or the business review or the business plan. So some of the things that we just think are the bread and butter of management or of leadership, AI tools can now do, and they will only get better. So it's a bit of a existential dilemma that I think once you're out of it, you then seek your purpose, your meaning, your creativity. And that I think is primarily why people are leaving corporate to seek meaning and purpose and build careers that maybe is a portfolio of different things that they can do where they can really add value and add human value.
Yeah. So your perspective is that while technology is freeing leaders from the grind and giving them space to finally ask deeper questions of purpose, it also is amplifying a different kind of pressure, sort of the need to prove our human worth in systems that increasingly optimize for efficiency and output.
That's exactly what I think. Yeah. I think we are being put in a position where even to ourselves, we have to prove to ourselves, well, what's the human meaning or what's the human impact here, right? And we use AI as tools, as enablers, as enhancers, as assistants, augmenters, you name it. I think it should be part of the human experience. Well, it already is part of the human experience, but it should continue to be a part of the experience and maybe increasingly more so. However, there's a human element there, which is something that only humans can do, or humans can do with the help of AI. That is kind of brings us the question of, well, what is that really? How do we implement it? How do we execute it in the best way possible? And then what's in it for me in my life? If this job can be done by machines, then maybe I should leave this job and do something else that's more meaningful to me, that's more meaningful for the world.
So that's challenging us to anchor ourselves and to even go on this discovery journey of what it means to be human.
100%. And that's a big question. I don't claim to have figured it out myself, but I think it's a good question. I think I love that word challenge. I think it's a challenging question, but in a good way, so positively so. And I think it's going to make us stretch and it's going to make us enhance really ourselves.
Yeah, and on that, can you talk a little bit more about the three levels of listening, with the highest one being global listening, sensing what's not said,
Yeah.
the context, the emotion, the energy. Can you tell more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for the listeners or your viewers who are not familiar with the three levels of listening, the first level is to listen to respond. So, that's something that we all sometimes do, and that's okay, right? We're thinking, oh, you have blonde hair, I have red hair. Tell me more about your job. You are in New York, I am in Dublin. And so, I'm listening to the information, but so that I can respond with my facts or my responses, right? So that's level one listening. Very superficial, not bad, but not deep enough, arguably. Level two listening is active listening. It's listening to understand. So then I might say, oh, you live in New York. What's that like? What's New York like? It's a big city. Do you enjoy it? Do you really take advantage of the amenities? So I really want to understand what your truth is and what your story is, right? So a little bit deeper, but then there's the level three listening, which you've said it. It's called global listening. We call that listening to sense or listening to listen, right? Which is where I listen to the facts that you're sharing with me. I listen to the information and how it's making you feel, and all of the truth around those superficial facts. And I also listen to what's not being said. So, in other words, understand maybe some friction or some feeling or some emotion in the silence or in what's happening between the lines or between the words. There might be some discomfort that something's off, maybe, right? Only humans can sense that in this, at least where we are right now. So, level one listening in the context of AI can do that very well, right? Probably even better than humans, to be honest. So, some of the superficial things of note taking, for example, or summarizing the follow ups, the action items, the overarching maybe sentiment, right? If I say I'm happy, then it says, okay, so Myra said that she's happy, so her sentiment is happy. Whereas as the human, I might tell you, yeah, no, all's good. I'm happy. Happy. Yeah. Am I happy? Or you might question, oh, well, you don't sound very happy. I mean, if you said it that way, it might be a little bit judgmental, but you immediately, because you have a human brain, you immediately picked up on the fact that, oh, well, she's saying that she's happy, but there's something there. She might be happy for the most part, but there's something going on, right? So that's kind of um I sometimes tell my clients you can use AI as your analyst or as your assistant, but not as your antenna, right? So just being alert and understanding the tone and understanding what's not being said is something that I think stays with the humans, and that's important to teams, to organizations, to culture, to psychological safety, and the list goes on.
I fascinates me. So I have two follow-up questions. So one is, how do I get better? How can I train myself to be a good global listener? And then also, how can how are you actually helping leaders to protect and even amplify that skill, especially when everything around them is optimized for speed and data?
Yeah, I think allowing the time, and it sounds too simple on the one hand, or it sounds too impossible in the fast paced world that we live in, especially in corporate lives or leadership lives, as you say. But time definitely is a factor. But there is actually a good checklist or cheat sheet, if you will. The first thing I always tell people is lead with curiosity. Just show up. And sometimes, sometimes it doesn't come naturally, but it is a learned skill. So you can fake it till you become it, right? So you can say, I'm going to go talk to Val and I'm going to be curious. Now, that sounds a little bit mechanic and maybe not too emotional or maybe not too genuine. But if you actually intentionally, genuinely mean it, you can show up to a meeting and say, I'm going to lead with curiosity. So when you tell me you live in New York, I will say, what's that like? And then human beings, we love stories. We are wired to be empathetic to other humans and their emotions. So once you maybe force yourself, and I know that's not a great word, but I'm not going to sweeten it for you. Once you force yourself into it by telling yourself, I'm going to be curious and I'm going to ask open, powerful questions, then you kind of already find yourself in it oftentimes. So what does it mean? So first curiosity, then open powerful questions. Open questions are ones that don't have an answer of yes or no, right? So they usually start with the three W's. So what, where, when, why. And then also we have how. Okay, so four W's and how. So those are open questions, as opposed to asking you, do you live in New York? Yes. Okay, well, then the conversation's over. I can ask you, where do you live? What's that like? How do you like it? So then more and more the stories come out, and then I can ask more questions. And so a relationship is built, and mutual trust is built from that. And then, of course, the other thing is there's a long list, and I won't get into it all. But the other thing is we need to minimize distractions. And guess what? The biggest distraction is, which it feels ironic saying this on an AI related podcast, but our conversation at least, it's our cell phones and it's all of our devices. It's all of our. We were talking about it with my family the other day that in our kitchen we talk and sometimes Google comes up because we have a Google Home and Google comes up and says, "What's that now?" Or the weather in this location tomorrow is this because it's listening sometimes it says funny things, but it's
Um,
always listening, right? So it's a distraction. Even when you actually don't proactively look at the distraction, it can be a distraction. So really allowing that time, the space, and then leading with curiosity and open, powerful questions.